Goliath, this is 2 Bravo. Request permission to engage enemy paratroopers and attempt to snatch a grid Papa Uniform 259er, 119er. Break. Enemy is unaware of our presence at this time. Over. Solid copy. Hitman 2-3.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Ben Powers coming at you from the Commander's Voice. My guest today is Major General retired Dave Bryant. He is the original commander of the 112th Special Operations Signal Battalion, as well as having a storied career in the Signal Corps, uh, all the way up to the general officer rank. So, General, thank you for joining us today.
I'm honored to be here, and it's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to it.
So, sir, I want to just kind of jump right into it. So, you are obviously spent your career in the Signal Corps, but you spent a lot of time in special operations as well. Can we just kick off a little bit of your background, what your commissioning source, what made you choose to go signal, what made you choose to get involved in the airborne community, and kind of the early days of your career, sir?
Well, I'm a graduate of Jacksonville State University. It's in northeastern Alabama. Go Gamecocks! Conference USA champs this year. Uh, I was an ROTC graduate. Signal Corps was I was a regular Army commission cadet. So one of my choices on the list was Signal Corps. I had put armor, artillery, and Signal Corps, I think. Uh, I don't know why. I couldn't tell you. That was a long time ago. but but at that time, Signal Corps was one of those, and I think that I was accepted into the Signal Regiment because of my education, my degree, and I had taken. I was My degree was in secondary education. My life plan at that time was to uh, serve in the Army for 6 years, and then come back home, um, teach high school, um, chemistry, math, English. I was certified in a number of areas. And I think maybe because I had taken so many math and chemistry courses and physics and all that stuff in college, and they probably said, well, let's put this guy in the signal regiment. We need some RA officers commissioned in year group 70. So that's where I ended up. My first school, of course, was down at the Signal Center at now Fort Eisenhower. From there, my duty assignment was all on my orders. So my first duty assignment was going to be the 82nd Airborne Division. I had requested airborne training and ranger training en route, and it was approved. So I went from the Signal Corps training base at Eisenhower over to Fort Benning, and went through jump training, and then went right into ranger school. And lo and behold, showed up at Fort Bragg. I was assigned as the SIGO to the 3rd Battalion, 325th Airborne Infantry. I was there about a year, and I had become really intrigued by uh, the guys across the post, the Green Berets.
Yes, sir.
And so I went to my XO, who was a Green Beret major, kind of doing his time in the in an infantry battalion. And I went to him and I said, I I, I think I'd really like to go uh, do that. Um, I've learned a lot about it. I've looked at it. He said, well, you have to go over an interview and you have to go through the accession phase, and then they'll tell you whether they'll accept you or not. So I did all of that, and ended up graduating from the Q course, and that began really. When you're in the 82nd, you're really a part of America's contingency response military force, and going to special forces then as a signal corps officer, and suddenly being airborne ranger and special forces qualified, gave me sort of a unique, um, I guess you'd say, a set of credentials. And so I immediately was teaching at the John F. Kennedy Center, Warfare Center. I was around a number of special mission units that had missions going in and out of Fort Bragg in those days. Um, so I was involved in that until for about 2, 3 years, and then off to Korea for a year, and then back. This time to the 7th Special Forces Group, where I was the S3 of the support battalion, and then later the signal company commander. Well, I can tell you that that experience in being the signal company commander was really eye-opening. We had equipment that literally had serial numbers going back to World War II.
Oh my goodness.
Our HF radios were our backbone in those days. I'm talking 75, 76, that time frame. And the HF radios actually had tubes in them. I know that sounds crazy, but yeah, like serial number 001 for a radio, and it had a General Electric tube in it for the amplifier. I mean, it was just ancient stuff. The Kleinschmidt teletype machines that we had. Anyway, I just thought, what in the world? And then come to find out uh, that we trained real hard, and I worked maintenance real hard, and we got pretty good, frankly, in the 7th Group. So good that we started getting joint missions to go support what they call the SOCs in the theaters now were called the Joint Unconventional Warfare Task Forces. And so suddenly we were out there with this old Army stuff, but we had it running and working. And now we've got to tie into a joint network because we had to be able to talk to the Air Force and the Navy and the Marines. And it was difficult. And I will tell you that if it had not been for technicians from those services giving us a hand, we probably never would have had mission success. But we did. And through no small part of me just being stubborn about some things, I think. Just I knew we had to do it. It was critical for our mission profile, so I just got stubborn about it, and I went up and sold my boss on it. And I said, "Look, I'm probably going to stub my toe. I need your cover." This was the group commander. He said, "Well, uh, you're the only group right now that's got anything that's working. That's why we're getting all these joint mission requirements for you and your company." And I said, "Well, sir, that's a good thing, isn't it?" And he said, "Yeah, just don't do anything too too ugly."
I got you, sir.
So anyway, uh,
So
from
was this in a time, sir? This was pre-Goldwater Nichols, so I'm assuming there wasn't a whole lot. Like you didn't have the joint communication support element. You didn't have joint
no,
organizations dedicated to comms at that point. Everything's very stovepiped, and you got to figure
there
it out.
wasn't even U.S. SOCOM. The Joint Readiness Command was occupying the headquarters building down at MacDill, which the SOCOM guys eventually moved into. No, it was not. It was difficult, uh, and frankly, um, we just had to work really hard, and we just took our people. Just soldiers are good, and if they have the right leadership, they're going to really astound you at how good they can perform. And so we did our best to take care of our soldiers and get the best equipment that we could, and I guess we got pretty good at it. And so off to the advanced course after company command, and uh, off to Europe to a tank brigade. Uh, Boy, I tell you, people, I guess they thought they were crazy. They sent a Green Beret signal officer to a tank brigade in Germany. But I'm gonna tell you something. I fell in love with those big iron beasts, and it upset me though that the radio teletype system that the Army issued them, which was housed inside an M577 armored command and control vehicle, and it just rattled it to pieces. And every time you'd move it, we wouldn't sit still long enough to have to put all the pieces back together. So we came up with an idea in our brigade that we would store all the major components in equipment with foam padding, equipment cases, and then at least the stuff would be in one piece, and we could strap it together. And so we got to where we could actually do radio teletype. And by the way, my background from SF in using HF radios was a plus uh, because there wasn't a lot of experience because the thing never worked. So we got it working, and then we got all the whole brigade radio teletype working, and um, I guess I've given you this kind of detailed background uh, because by the time that I got I went from Germany. I went down to Kelly Barracks to be the Corps radio officer because the Corps commander had been briefed by the First Armored Division. The First commander said, "Look, I got a brigade that's got all these teletypes up there. They're actually sending messages across the battlefield. Man, we ought to try to do that in the whole Corps." And so I said, "Well, send that guy down here." And well, it turns out that I was only in that job though about a month, and the word came down. The Corps G6 uh, called me in his office and said, "Hey, we're going to start up a brigade, and you're going to be the brigade S3." I said, "Sir, I'm only a captain." He said, "Yeah, but I got a good feeling about this." So I was the first S3 of the 93rd Signal Brigade in Europe
That's
in
awesome, sir.
Stuttgart. So anyway, from there I went to recruiting duty. Well, and that was really exciting because um, on the way there, I thought I must have really stepped on it to get assigned to recruiting duty. But when I got there, I found out that they were only sending people with a decent background and good files and in there because Max Thurman had gone in to be the new commander, and he just said, "Look, we're going to make mission." The Army Recruiting Command had not made mission, and so I was the training officer responsible for overhauling all the training courses for the recruiters, um, and I was on the committee that came up with the "Be All You Can Be" thing. And
That's awesome, sir. Good
one
job, sir.
idea that I had was the Army College Fund, and we got all the extra bonus dollars because we were competing with the other services for the same high. That was what changed. The Army said, "We're not only going to make mission, we're going to do it with the upper mental category 1 to 3A uh, fit
Yep, go after
candidate,"
that, sir.
and
Go after those quality applicants.
it changed everything. And it fit right in, by the way, with the modernization program that President Reagan had put in there. We needed, smart young soldiers to fly those Apache helicopters and Black Hawks and do that. I think it was the M109 artillery
Yes, sir.
system, and
The
of
Paladin.
course the Abrams
Yes, sir.
tank. Wow, changed everything changed in those years. And we were putting really bright American youth in those systems, changed the Army for the better and for a generation for sure. Um, I left recruiting duty, went to Command Staff College. While I was there, the Army decided to establish the first Special Operations Command. And so a guy that I had served with in the 7th Group was now the G1 of that brand new organization. And he came to Fort Leavenworth and he said, "Dave," I was a brand new major by then, and he said, "Dave, we're going to ask you to not go to the University of Kansas and get a master's degree in computer science. We're going to ask you to come back to Fort Bragg and be the G6 of First SOCOM." I think it was a different name. It was the Assistant Chief of Staff of Communication Electronics or something fancy like that. But in effect, it was to come and be the G6. And the first thing that the Army did was in 1984 was publish a modified requirements document called MROC 2-84. And it was for the revitalization of special operations for the Army. And it was a tremendous commitment that the Army made, but they had the broad framework for that put together. But now it became First SOCOM's job to work with the Army staff to figure out now what are the nuts and bolts of that.
Roger.
Uh, if we're going to modernize Army Special Ops, what's that really mean? Nuts and bolts. Well, so we went to work with that on this G6 staff. Even as we're putting the staff together, we went to work on that. We had 26 major initiatives. I mean, everything from multi-band radios. No one had even seen one before. Some of these things didn't exist, but digital this, digital that. I mean, I could see the handwriting on the wall that was the future. And uh, backpack satellite radios. I mean, it just went on and on and on. 26 editions. The most important one, though, and the most difficult, was to convince people that we have to professionalize our communications in Army Special Operations. And that begins with having a signal battalion on the book to serve as the professional hub for communications for Special Operations Forces, regardless of whether it was Green Berets, Rangers, Aviation, PSYOP. It didn't matter. We needed a home for modernization, um, budgeting, and technical commonality, but advanced technology, cutting edge stuff, the best technology that America can provide for our combat forces. Well, I fought long and hard, and I got uh, told to shut up and sit down more than once, I tell you, by general officers. But um, somebody listened, and we had a great CG, um, and he really fought, I think, to get some visibility. And guess what? General Max Thurman was now Vice Chief of Staff of the Army. Didn't hurt that he referred to me as Brother Bryan. And so I was up in the Pentagon and visiting the staff, the G3 staff and the G6 staff on the Army staff, trying to get resources for all these other projects and everything. But I always had that briefing with me of why we need a signal battalion. And by the way, at no cost to special operations, I was able to convince. And when I say I'm going to tell you something. I had a great team. I just happened to be at the pointy edge of it. Uh, but the Signal Regiment was inactivating a battalion in Europe, and I grabbed those spaces. And that's where the spaces came from. And a lot of people in Special Ops thought that those came from A Team. And I will tell you, write it down. It's historically true that battalion did not cost them one single
Roger that, sir.
18 comm space. It was all Signal Regiment support. But anyway, while I was still fighting the fight, we get the word literally within a few days or over a period of 2 weeks. That's pretty fast. I get informed that I'm on the promotion list for '05. I'm on the battalion command list, and the Army has approved the Special Operations Signal Battalion concept. And it's going to activate it in two increments, year one and year two. And oh, by the way, Major Bryan, since you're on the promotion list, the command list, and this was your idea, you're going to command it.
That's
So,
outstanding, sir. Be careful what
so
you ask
that's where
for,
it
though.
came from. And it was, I couldn't be prouder of what's gone on over the years. It's been my great pleasure. I believe, maybe not every single commander, but I have had one-on-ones with every incoming commander almost without exception. Maybe there's a few that I missed because of time and distance or whatever. But to tell them, look, this is what it took to get the Army to approve this. And this is why you have to be great every day. It's like being a heart surgeon. You can't have an off day. Uh, Everybody wants, if you're going in to have heart surgery, and I've had a heart valve removed, and the last thing I said to the surgeon is, "Hey, are you having a good day?" Before we do this, he said, "I'm having a great day." I said, "Well, let's do it then." But the fact is, that battalion has an absolute astonishing record of achievement over the years. I mean, it's in '86 we activated the 112th Special Operations Signal Battalion, and to this day, we activated on a Friday morning, and on Sunday afternoon, the first soldiers from that battalion actually deployed on a mission. And I believe somebody from that battalion has been deployed ever since.
I don't doubt it, sir.
It has the reputation of being the finest signal battalion in the Army. And the great thing is that every commander gets a load of me in his ear, right, or her ear, on day one, because I'm at the change of command ceremony, and then I have a one-on-one with them and say, "Look, this is what it took, and this is why. These are the fundamentals of the bedrock of what makes the culture in this battalion one of superior and outstanding achievement by practicing excellence in every single thing you do." I'll give you an example. The current battalion commander sent a message out recently to all of the former commanders. And his brag point was that they won the, I believe, ForceCom battalion level competition for best maintenance program. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with special operations, maybe, but it does.
Roger.
Because the special in special operations means you take really just great Americans and they become exceptional when they have the right leadership and and uh, and they can thrive in the right culture. And that's what the secret of success has been in the 112th from day one is that excellence at everything you do, and there's never any slack in the rope. There's never a shortcut. Uh, do the best you can every time. Mission success. Take care of your soldiers and their families. And I believe that formula has worked because they've had great success over the, gosh, 38 years now.
That's amazing, sir. That's a great
Yeah.
legacy too. That's fantastic. So the question I've got for you, sir, is
And by the way, I apologize for going to all that length. I hope I finally got around to what you were
no, sir. No,
asking
that
me
was
about.
that was terrific. You actually kind of took me through the whole arc of the interview where I wanted to go. I didn't have to ask a question. That was fantastic. The follow-on question I've got for you though is that an organization like the 112, you've done a very good job of laying out the expectations, the performance, and the culture. But I find it interesting that unlike other organizations within special operations, to my knowledge, there's not like an assessment program. There's not a
No,
selection per se. It's you take the product that Fort Gordon, now Fort Eisenhower, gives you. They may or may not be airborne qualified. I'm assuming they all are still, but then you immediately put them into that environment and you kind of train them in-house, and that seems to work. So do you think that if it was larger than a battalion, do you think that culture could still thrive, or would you need a gatekeeping selection process if it ever grew larger than a battalion?
I'm not going to try to say that that wouldn't be nice. But part of the battalion's value to the Army goes well beyond special operations. We are a crown jewel of the Signal Regiment. And so we want people in the Signal Regiment, wherever they are in the Army, to know if you think you've got a little something extra going on in your heart, in your head, you give us a call. And if you're a brand new out of school, you're a private PFC. Uh, I use the figurative thing. I guess they don't do this anymore, but literally, um, a 2.5 ton cargo truck would pull up and the tailgate would go down, and the replacement detachment at Fort Bragg would say, "Here's your 6 new soldiers," and but their indoctrination in the battalion began right then. And so, if you walk, when you go down there to Fort Liberty and you visit them, you will see very young people walking around with a certain stride in their step in that battalion. They they their their shoulders are back. They're confident. They're relaxed. They're calm. They know they're good. They know they have a tough mission, and they know that there's a lot of expectations. Excuse me. Let me turn that. A lot of expectations for them, and people for whom they provide mission capability are so confident in their abilities now. It this culture, a, a new arrival is inculcated into that culture right from the beginning. No, there's no assessment course, but there is a training course, uh, and uh, the history of the unit is an important part of that. So they understand you're here for a time and a season, but this has been going on for a long time. So you not only have to perform while you're here, you got to remember that all those who came before made this possible for you. And what you do makes everything possible for those who will come after you. This is, there's no such thing as stepping off that standard of excellence in everything you do, personal behavior, professional behavior. Um, the, and so that culture becomes one of pride and confidence, and they care deeply about each other. And when I go down there, I'm telling you, I was down there, I guess, last June for the change of command ceremony, and I told them when I had a chance to talk to a bunch of the young soldiers, and I said, you know what? When I drive through the gates here at Fort Liberty, 50 years peels off of me. And it makes me want to reach in and get my ruck and say, okay, let's go.
That's awesome, sir.
Do it all over again. It's an exceptional place because we have common people who do uncommon things. They just believe uh, in themselves, and they're so good. They're exceptional, and there's nothing wrong with exceptionalism.
Not at all, sir. Sir, and that is an awesome note to go out on. We're right up against our time, so I want to, General, I want to thank you so much for coming out and sharing your thoughts with us.
Hey, Ben, if I could just take 30 seconds, well, I want to thank all of those who were there in the beginning with me. They're the heroes of all this. Like I said, I was just at the pointy end of the spear.